welcome back to another Facebook Live broadcast. I'm wondering if you are caring for someone diagnosed with Parkinson's. If you've made your way to this video because you are a Parkinson's caregiver, you're in the right spot. I have a couple questions for you. The first one being, do you find yourself struggling with feelings like numbness, sadness, worry, or overwhelm? You can give me a thumbs up or a sad face or a heart if any of these apply to you. Do you feel like you sometimes have low energy, aches and pains in your body, or have any difficulty sleeping? Again, give me a thumbs up if some of these relate to you. I see some people checking in here. Hello, everybody. Maybe you're someone whose feelings have bubbled over from some of those into anger, anxiety, depression, or even hopelessness. And you may have started isolating yourself because of the fluctuations and intensity of the feelings that you're having, or even constantly feeling guilty or ashamed that you're not doing enough as a Parkinson's caregiver, or that you're feeling guilty that you're having these heavy thoughts to start with about the person that you love and the person that is in your life with a Parkinson's diagnosis. If you identified with any of these questions, any of these symptoms, mild to super intense, I really want you to stay put, because today we have an incredible guest on to talk about how to break through some of these challenging feelings as a Parkinson's caregiver, to leave you feeling lighter and more in control of your situation and more connected, most importantly, with your loved one who has Parkinson's. So if you're new to Invigorate, welcome. My name is Sarah King. I'm a really passionate Parkinson's advocate whose main goal is to help you translate the research about living well with Parkinson's into action so you can decrease your worry and get on with your life, living a life that you love and that is full of energy and vitality. And as a Parkinson's caregiver, this is even more important, because what I've seen in my experience is that if our Parkinson's patients, our loved ones who have Parkinson's, are not supported by the ones that care about them the most, then they really can struggle in the end. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join me and our guest, Debbie, for this Facebook Live broadcast. I promise it will be worth your time, and we're going to dig into some really important questions about grief and coping and sadness and all of these kind of heavier feelings here in a moment. But I want you to introduce yourself in the comment section below. Just say hi, let us know where you're checking in from, if you're a caregiver, if you are someone diagnosed with Parkinson's, just so we know who's watching. And this video actually kicks off the first of a series of videos that are dedicated to our Parkinson's caregivers this November. And we're going to do weekly interviews with experts. And what we're going to do at the end is gather all of this information, the tools, the strategies, the resources that we mentioned, all into one giant caregiver kit that we're going to send out to our entire Invigorated community. So if you want to sign up, if you're already on our newsletter, you will get this already. But if you're not on our newsletter and you want to get the caregiver kit when we publish it at the end of November, you can go to invigoratept.com/caregivers with an S on the end. And we'll be sure to send you reminders about the interviews as they go along. And then at the end, compile everything and shoot it out to you in a really easy to digest and action-oriented caregiver kit. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so excited to have you here. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Debbie on. And Debbie Heinrich Debbie Heinrich serves on the board of directors at Companions on a Journey. And Companions on a Journey was established in 1997 by a woman named Sheila Munafo-Kanoza. I hope I got her name right. She established Caregivers on a Journey 4 years after her husband, Vince, died at the age of 39, which was 10 years after he received a cancer diagnosis. She was 37 years old, a widow, and raising 3 children. So what she did was she left her job at Procter & Gamble. She began studying bereavement counseling, and then Companions on a Journey was born. And now it's expanded into include support groups for adolescents, for teens and adults to help with grief and bereavement. And then Debbie, who we're going to bring on here in a moment, is she joined Companions on a Journey about 8 years ago, after her husband passed away. She's a nurse practitioner who's worked in a variety of settings, including hospice, oncology, critical care, and palliative care. And just with that background, you can tell that she not only has experience from the side of a healthcare practitioner, incredibly knowledgeable in transitions in life and the emotions that can come with it, but also on the other side as a receiver of some of these wonderful services that caregivers and grieving companions and emotional companions can receive. So let's go ahead and let me push a few buttons and we'll bring Debbie on here, and let us know if you guys can see us or hear us in the comment section. Hello, Debbie. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask you, I know we did this earlier, but can you turn your mic down just a little bit more? It seems to be increasing back up. Okay. Just so we don't blow out our friends at home. There, that's better. That's maybe okay. A little bit more.
I'm afraid if I go any more, I won't hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll keep it here. If you just want to kind of keep it a lighter voice. Okay. But I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Originally, everyone, we had Sheila come on, but Sheila's going through some transitions of her own with her family. So Debbie is filling in at the last moment. So Debbie, thank you so much for being brave with our technology and joining us today. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. And I'm a little nervous about this. As I was telling other people, I'm used to doing presentations, but I always have my slides as my props. So I hope I can answer all your questions as we go through. I'm sure we'll have a good interview.
Yes, well, our community is very forgiving and very loving. And so don't feel any pressure to get it perfectly right. Obviously, we just go with the flow while we're here. So let's just go ahead and start with something that people may intuitively feel like they know about grief, but actually when they start thinking about it, they may not be able to put their finger on it. So can you identify for everyone what is grief and what is the symptoms of grief?
Okay, well, grief is the reactions that we have to any loss. And I think many times people only think about grief when they're thinking about someone dying. But, every kind of little loss that we can have throughout our lives, we grieve. We grieve if, on the lighthearted side, although some people don't consider it as lighthearted as others, if my Ohio State Buckeyes don't do well, I might grieve at the end of that game, right? I'm sad. And that's a smaller loss. But, if we're dealing with something more serious, like an advanced progressive illness, there are multiple losses that happen along the way, and we are going to be grieving those losses throughout that process. So that's what a lot of our patients and caregivers are dealing with, are those multiple losses that happen through that illness. And
go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and grief will manifest itself in many different ways. We have the kind of the bodily way, right, where we can feel that stress inside, that we can have an upset stomach, that we can get headaches and we get muscle tension, and it can stress our bodies to the point of illness. And then there's the emotional side of that, where we can't concentrate. Where we want to cry, where we get angry, where we get very sad. And there's this social side of that, where we can make ourselves more isolated. Again, just not being able to be distracted easily, feel like we can't accomplish things the way that we normally do. So that it's a whole host of reactions that we see when somebody is grieving.
And the thing that I appreciate about hearing a lot of those symptoms is, I'm sure the people watching too, it's not just this feeling of sadness. There are a lot of symptoms that come up that you might not think, the feelings of overwhelm or being really tired or wanting to bust out and cry at any moment. You might not actually identify, oh, I'm grieving. You might just think I'm stressed out or I'm tired. And the theme of this video today is about caregiver burnout. And it kind of seems like a lot of these symptoms of feeling way too taxed can also overlap with potentially underlying grief that maybe hasn't been addressed. Is that accurate, or is that a misinterpretation?
Yes, I think absolutely. I know, one of the questions that you had sent was, how do people know if they're grieving, right? And I think, whenever we feel a little off kilter, again, I'm not able to concentrate, or I just want to break down into tears at the slightest little thing that happens, or I blow up at the slightest little thing that happens. That's when we kind of need to assess ourselves, like what's going on here? Am I really tired? Am I getting enough sleep? What's at the bottom of that? And if we walk it backwards and really think about what's going on, many times it will kind of lead us to identifying that it's, grieving the loss of some aspect of who you are.
Let's go ahead and dive into that, because that was my next question. I've learned in researching for this interview specifically, I've learned about a lot of different types of grief. And so maybe you can talk to us about why grief happens after a Parkinson's diagnosis. What kind of grief is it? How does it differ from maybe the grief of actually physically losing someone?
One of my favorite authors who helped me kind of understand a lot of things related to grief and grieving and suffering is Eric Cassell. It's a physician author. He wrote a book called, I'll probably get it wrong, but the meaning of medicine and I'm not going to come up with the title, but anyhow. Suffering. And the way he explained it is that as individuals, as people, we are made up of so many different aspects. So we have our bodies. If something happens to our body, that there can be a loss there, and that can cause us to suffer. We have relationships. And again, if we are a person who is ill, and that affects how we interact with somebody else, that can cause us to suffer as a caregiver. Our relationships with that person who is having some progressive illness and progressive losses, that relationship can be taxed. We have roles in our lives. I was a spouse, right? So that role was certainly challenged when my husband was ill. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a nurse. And, for me, one of the things that was very difficult when my husband was ill is I resigned from my job to take care of him, which was very important that I do that. I wanted to be that person who was there to take care of him, but I still lost a part of my identity as a nurse when I left that job. So that is an aspect of suffering. I also lost those social relationships that I had at work when I was staying home and taking care of my husband. And that is a loss. I don't regret that decision, right? It was important for me to be there, to be the one who was taking care of him. But I think as caregivers, we need to recognize that it does affect us in many different ways, and it causes suffering. And just recognizing that is important.
Recognizing it as a normal part of this journey.
Exactly. Right. Many times, you'll hear from the person who is ill, I don't want to be a burden. And as caregivers, we say, no, you're not being a burden, right? Or I wouldn't wouldn't want anybody else to be here to take care of you. Yes, it's work. And it's that balance. It is recognizing that, yes, when somebody needs more assistance, when it has changed our lifestyle, when it has changed the way we relate to one another, that, being a caregiver for someone is different than being their spouse, right? That, all of those changes are difficult. And one may look at it as, I guess I prefer not to use the word burden, right? It's work. It is work to do that. But it's only a burden if I perceive that as something that I don't want to do for my loved one, right? If I acknowledge that this is work, but kind of throw out the word burden, I think it really helps put it into perspective. And so when that loved one does say, I don't want to be a burden, you'd say, you know what, this is work and I'm tired and sometimes I'm really grumpy and I apologize for that, but this is where I want to be. I want to be here with you.
That communication aspect and reinforcing the loving side, but not downplaying, oh, this is easy, or I'm not tired, I'm okay. Yes. Being honest and open. And
because you know what, when we're not honest with each other, we know it, right?
Yep.
I think on both sides. The patient knows we're not being honest, or, our loved one, and then we know that our loved one is not being honest with us if they try to cover things up. And so that open communication is just so important. And
you have this tendency to want to, it seems like I'm not a caregiver, and so I can only assume this is what's going on. But you feel like you don't want to burden, as a caregiver, you might feel like you don't want to burden your loved one with worry or whatnot. And so you think you're actually helping them by saying you're okay, when really it's actually maybe progress or kind of feeding that cycle.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a great thing to lead into this next question. Well, let me back up a little bit. I don't know if we covered in depth exactly how grief can contribute to caregiver burnout. We did a little bit at the beginning. Was there anything else that you had to kind of contribute to that, how grief may contribute to caregiver burnout over time?
Well, I think that grief is a part of being a caregiver, right? So the way that it would contribute to caregiver burnout is not acknowledging that grief and allowing yourself to grieve. It's when we kind of shove all the feelings down and say, I'm not going to feel that right now. I think that's when we get into burnout. When I talk with nurses, and we talk about the work of grieving, right? And again, we have theories about this, right? Have talked all the theory, but the first aspect of the tasks of grieving, to go through what do we need to do to work through our grief, and first is and I'll make sure I'll get them right, just acknowledge that there really is a loss that happens, right? So again, when it's the death of someone, that's a pretty clear loss. But I think when we're dealing with someone who is slowly losing function, right, or needing more and more assistance, we have to acknowledge those losses that are happening there, and then allow ourselves to experience the pain of that loss. I mean, to recognize this is hard. It's hard for the person who's losing that function. It's hard for us because of the changes that we need to make in our lives, and just acknowledge that. And then we move on to how do I deal with this current situation, this loss now that has happened. And when I talk to nurses, I say, that we're pretty good as healthcare professionals acknowledging the losses of the people that we care for, right? And then, adjusting to the environment with that loss, and investing our energy in different ways. But we're not real good at allowing ourselves to experience the pain of that loss. And I think when all of those pains build up, that's when we get burnout. that we need to acknowledge this hard work of caregiving, and deal with that pain, or we will burn out.
Yeah, and in that order too. I think a lot of people, I come from a household, hi mom, that, you don't really talk about your emotions. It's a lot of, okay, I feel a certain way. What action can I take right away to make me feel better? And skipping that acknowledgement part, like you were saying, that's only just shoving things down. You're not processing anything. You're just staying busy until it pops out the top.
Right.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I think something that would help our viewers, because I think a lot of our viewers actually are people diagnosed with Parkinson's, and they are actually caregivers as well. There's a small segment of our group that is the patient as well as a caregiver for someone else in their life. Right. And so even if you're on both sides of the equation, one side of the equation, there are these activities or maybe some processes that you can go through. So it seems like journaling might be a good way to move through the acknowledgement. But what resources do you recommend to people who come to your support groups to use to kind of move through these feelings of grief?
We need to recognize that everybody deals with things differently. So what works well for one person may not work well for another. But I think just being part of a support group is really helpful for a multitude of reasons. One is that you are able to connect with somebody who is going through similar kinds of things, and that they understand you in a way that other people don't. So to be a part of a support group can be extremely helpful because you get that listening ear of someone who knows what you're going through. I think the other is that whether or not you have that support group is also to have someone or a couple of someones that can just listen to you. Don't need to offer advice. Right? It's just being able to listen to you vent about what's going on, to help, to listen as you process maybe what your next steps are or what your feelings are. So that non-judgmental person to listen. And that may be a family member. It may be clergy. It may be some other resource within your faith community. I know the church that I attend has Stephen ministers. So they're lay people who are trained to be, kind of support individuals in the congregation. So that can be a good source of support. It may be, your best friend from college or whatever, but just to try and identify that person who is just able to listen to you. And if you have a hard time talking to people, I think that journaling idea is really helpful. I mean, you don't have to expose all of your fears and concerns to anybody else. You can sit down with that journal and journal it all out, and help to identify what it is you're really truly feeling, and to help you process through that. I think there's something else that I came up with. The other thing that is certainly helpful is to get physical. I think sometimes that helps you think more clearly. So if it's just getting outside and walking for 10 minutes, it can, just help clear your mind, or help you be able to process things. I mean, that was my go-to in college when I got totally stressed out, is I would just go out for a walk. And then I could come back and deal with, that exam that I had to prepare for, or whatever it was. But the physical activity can be really, really helpful for, again, processing, but also part of caring for yourself. As we do need to care for ourselves as caregivers. Nobody can be a good caregiver 24/7 without taking care of themselves. So they need to eat well. They need to get adequate sleep. They need to take care of themselves emotionally and spiritually. They need to get that physical activity. And, part of it is just taking time to take care of you as the caregiver. And many times we do shortchange ourselves in that process.
I think that's very true. We have a lot of people who want to kind of give their all for their person. But what's the saying around you have to fill your cup before you can fill others? You can't fill this cup from an empty cup, something along those lines. Someone in the comments will give it to me full out. But eating well, treating yourself right. How long each day or how often do you, obviously eating well is a daily habit, but as far as continuous self-care goes for care partners and companions, what's your recommendation?
Well, again, and that's going to vary from one person to another, but I think that it's important for everybody to set aside time every day to get that little bit of physical activity, whatever that is for them, and to take time to acknowledge their emotions, whether that is journaling or talking to someone. I think one other thing that we need to sometimes remind ourselves as caregivers, and especially in our, I can do it all, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, right? I think would be the old song, right? It's okay to ask for help. We must ask for help. So if that means I take advantage of that person who has said, if there's anything you need, just give me a call, right? And sometimes that's just so overwhelming to hear that anything, like there's so many things and I don't even know what to ask for, right? But it might be, hey, could you come over and stay at the house from, 2 until 4 on Wednesday afternoon so that I can, whatever that is, go get my hair cut. I can go get a massage. I can go for a walk. Or I can just go upstairs and close the door and put in, my earplugs and put on my eye shades and take a long nap. So really be open to accepting help and requesting that help. I think most people have that experience of lots of family and friends saying, just let me know what you need. So make a list.
That's a great tip. Make a list of the things that you need. When they come up and you feel really overwhelmed, jot them down so the next time somebody asks you, what's something I can do? You have a list and you don't have to rack your brain. That's a great tip for everybody. Something I would love to know from you, and I think this can go beyond just for caregivers, but when those really hard feelings come up, like feelings of anger or really deep, heavy feelings of maybe even depression, those really hard ones, what is something that people can do in the moment when they are experiencing intense feelings like that so they can move through them in maybe the most graceful possible way?
That's a tough one. And again, it's going to be different for different people and depending on what the circumstances are. I think if somebody is profoundly depressed, you have that sad blue mood every day for over 2 weeks, you don't see any hope, you don't have enjoyment in anything, you don't feel like eating, you're not sleeping well, you really do need to get professional help for that kind of depression. So again, that more clinical end of the depression spectrum. But I think without that profound depression, we can still have those days when we're down and depressed, and we can have those days when we just feel really angry and upset. it'd be interesting to hear everybody's comments on what they do. I mean, I know that there were times that I would be in the car and I would just pull over to the side of the road and I would scream. I just felt like I needed to get that out somewhere, and I didn't want to scream in front of my husband.
Mm-hmm.
That it was in the car, nobody could hear me. I might look a little crazy to the person who drives by, but just to be able to get that out. I read an article the other day about a woman who took up the hobby of throwing hatchets at targets. They have these it's like a shooting range, but with axes and hatchets kind of thing. She found that was the best stress reliever she has, ever experienced, was be able to throw a hatchet at a target. So as long as you are doing something safe, put a hatchet at another person or in your backyard, but a nice safe area. I think that again, it's physical. It helps kind of work through those emotions. Taking an egg outside and throwing it against a tree or the fence, and that can be a helpful way of working through some of those emotions too.
Yeah, that intensity, how that's safe for you and for others. I've heard some of my clients say that they have like a timeout card, like a playing card, or even like a printable kind of sign that they present when they're overwhelmed, and they get a free pass to just go for 10 minutes to their own space and do whatever they need to do. Cry, walk, throw hatchets at the trees. Taking a time out when those intense feelings feel like they're way too much, just creating that space. But I like the hatchet idea.
I was kind of intrigued by that.
Yeah, definitely. And Jeremy in the comments recommended meditation. I think Roger in the comments always recommends hugs, which I'm a huge fan of hugs. Ask whoever you're hugging before you hug them, as always. But those are great tips. And the last thing I wanted to touch on, and then we can hop into anything that I've forgotten to ask you, is this concept of shame and feeling as a caregiver that you might not be doing enough, that you're not a good caregiver because you're not able to reach this lofty goal that you've set for yourself, or maybe other people have set for you. Can you talk to us a little bit about maybe how shame differs from grief and how it can kind of impact one and the other?
When we talk about common feelings that people can have with grief, that you can have that shame and guilt. I haven't done enough, or I should have done more, or I should have identified this earlier. Or, I think anytime we get into the shoulds, that's a good signal that we could kind of step back and say, okay, what can I do differently, or could I have done differently, in reality, and remind ourselves that what I think is true all the time is that we do the best we can with the information and resources we have in the moment. And to congratulate ourselves on the good job that we've done, because it is hard work. Again, I think support groups can be helpful, because other people can say, oh yeah, I've had the same feeling, and you realize you're not alone, that there aren't like those super caregivers that truly have it all together, and feel like they've done 100% all the time, right? That we all kind of fall short of lofty goals, and we have to make sure that our goals are realistic in what we can accomplish in a 24-hour day.
Right. And focusing on the abundance of the things that you've done for the person that you love.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, is exactly what I hear you saying, is focusing on what you have done and not beating yourself up about those few things that maybe you could have done better, because no one's perfect and everyone knows you are trying as hard as you can. Right. And you're human. So that's beautiful. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't cover that you found valuable in your work with couples?
You know, the one thing that, as I was, trying to think about what might come up and what answers I should, have prepared, and I was reminded of the work of Ira Byock, who's a palliative medicine physician, and he wrote a book that's called The Four Things That Matter, and this is, these are the things that matter in everyday life and our relationships with each other. And I think if we can focus on these, it helps us a lot. And that is to be able to say to each other, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you have given me. To be able to say, I love you daily, right? To be able to say, I forgive you for anything that may have happened in the past or happened today that upset me, please forgive me. So it's, thank you, I love you, forgive me, and I forgive you. If we can do that in all of our relationships every day, then I think, we're going to have less shame and guilt in our lives. And the camera has frozen now, so I don't know if you're trying to say anything. Are you back?
Hey, everyone.
Hey,
I'm sorry if this cut out for everybody. On my end, all I see is me. Let me know if you can see me and hear me.
Sarah, I heard you for a minute and then it froze again.
And I'm sorry, we're fighting Wi-Fi problems. We definitely won't be doing a broadcast from here again because of the issues with the technology. But we'll see if Debbie hops back on. But if not, this has been an already amazing interview. We will take everything we've learned and put it inside of our caregiver kit. So again, invigoratept.com/caregivers. I'm going to throw this up. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Are we back?
Hello, everybody. Sorry, we are having such issues. Let me know if you guys can see me and hear me. Nav says I'm back. Great. I went ahead and, oh, she's still on. Debbie's still on. You can hear her talking. I can't see Debbie or hear Debbie. We're in different worlds right now. Hold on one second. See if I can bring this side by side. I can't see Debbie on my end. This is just entertaining at this point. Hold on. Debbie says I can see and hear you, except I can't see you, Debbie. This is not the optimal situation, but you know what? Lauren's on here. Let me see if I can show our guest. This is great. She can hear. Debbie, maybe you can close out of your screen and come back with the link that we sent you for the original broadcast, and yep. Okay. So as she's coming back on here, let me know if you guys have any questions. This will be a good time to gather some questions. Debbie went out. We're going to see if she can come back. I do not see Debbie. I'm not really sure what's going on right now. So this is fun. I'm going to enjoy watching this on the playback. But if you guys have questions or comments for the information that Debbie shared on grief, share them in the comments so that we can reply. And how can you guys see Debbie? I can't see her. I can't see her or hear her. Anywho, so we are going to put all this information into an easy to digest guide. The information is on the screen. It should be invigoratept.com/caregivers with an S. If you're on our newsletter already, then you will be able to access that. We're going to send it out to everyone on our list. If you can't, I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of messages from Debbie, can't get back on, but if you're not on our newsletter, sign up for a caregiver kit because we will send all of this information to you with links and all the resources and all of everything, so you don't have to come back to this video to hear what Debbie said. So I am going to hop off here. It looks like Debbie is having trouble getting back in, but Debbie and Sheila from Companions on a Journey, we're going to plan on having them back on in the future for more discussions around some of these emotional states that are really, really hard to talk about and even harder to feel through. So thank you all so much for watching me. And Debbie, thank you so much for joining me. If you're watching this, I'm sorry you can't get back in. What an anticlimactic finish. But if you enjoyed this broadcast, sorry about all the tech glitches. If you want to share this video, I would love that. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed at least the content of it, if not the tech glitches. And share the link for the caregiver kit with someone who you know who is caring for someone who has a loved one with Parkinson's. And we will be back next Monday with Ann Wallace from the Parkinson's Foundation. And she's going to be talking about how to wrap your head around becoming a Parkinson's caregiver and how to set yourself up from the very early diagnosis for success in the long run. And she is incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly compassionate, and wonderful. And again, she's from the Parkinson's Foundation. And so she has a lot of great resources to share with us. And that is going to be next week. So make sure that you are signed up for notifications. If you need help alerting, you can get alerts on Facebook of when we go live. We'll put the link in the comment section of how to get notified. On YouTube, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love that. And all the videos will be up there as well. So thanks for bearing with us. It was so great to be here with you guys, and we'll see you on the next video. All right. Big hugs. Keep moving. Bye, guys.